Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha Harihi Om Sadashivasamarambham Shankaracharya Madhyamam Asmadacharya Padyantam Vande Guru Paramparam Shruti Smriti Purananam Alayam Karunalayam Namami Bhagavatpada Shankaram Loka Shankaram Sadatmadhyana Niratam Vishayebhyah Parang Mukham Naumi Shastreshu Nishnatam Chandrasekhara Bharatim Om. So we were looking at verse number 18 of the Vivekachudamani. Sadhananyatra chatvari katitani manishibhihi yeshu satsveva sannistha yatabhavena siddhyati. So here Adi Shankaracharya is outlining the fourfold qualifications for commencement of Vedanta sadhana, being Viveka, discrimination, Vairagya, dispassion, Shamadhi Shatka Sampatti, disciplines, various kinds of mental disciplines, and Mumukshutvam, a desire for moksha. And he says that various sages in the past have outlined these four as the requirements for moksha. And then by invoking the logic of Anvaya and Vyatireka, the logic of co-presence and co-absence, Acharya Shankara Bhagavad says that if these four qualifications are there, then the jnana will arise for a person who has undergone Vedanta sadhana, and in the absence of these four qualifications, jnana will not arise. Therefore, establishing these as the entry requirements for the commencement of Vedanta sadhana. We were also looking at the commentary to this verse by Jagadguru Srimad Chandrasekhara Bharati Mahaswamihal, the 34th Acharya of the Sringeri Sharada Peetham, wherein the Jagadguru had talked about the Shruti support for these fourfold qualifications. And we had looked at on page number 14 of the Sanskrit commentary by Jagadguru Srimad Chandrasekhara Bharati Mahaswamihal, 10th line from the bottom, Nasa punaravartate iti shrutihi mokshasya nityatvam vadanti tatra ichham adadhati. So he had quoted various shrutis to show how each of the Viveka, Vairagya, Shamadhi Shatkam and Mumukshutvam were all hinted at in various shrutis, some directly, some indirectly. And we had looked at the Nasa Punaravartate Shruti from the Chandogya, wherein essentially it is said that the Jnani, after his body has dropped off, that is, once he has attained Videha Mukti, he does not return back into samsara. That Jnana has freed him from the cycle of births and deaths. He is not an individual anymore. He is Brahman himself, and that Brahman has no change, no birth, no death. Continuing, Upanishadam arthavadatvam vadatam karma mimamsakanam mate etasam swarte tatparyam nasti ityeva jnana sambhavat brahma jigyasitavyam tatra cha etadrisha visheshana vishishtaha adhikari iti jnanasya durlabhatvat manishibihi kathitani ityuktam. Upanishadam arthavadatvam vadatam karma mimamsakanam. So, he is talking about the Purva Mimamsakas here. Now, the Purva Mimamsakas are those philosophers who are ritualists, who believe that the primary purpose of the Vedas is to reveal various karmas, karma meaning Vedic rituals to be performed by humanity for the benefit to themselves and a benefit to society, and that the earning of punya as a result of performance of these Vedic karma was the highest aim. So dharma was the highest aim according to them. Now, they viewed that those sections of the Veda that did not prescribe a ritual, that were talking about the Atma, for example, and the Upanishads Their primary purpose is to talk about the Atma. So, from the perspective of the Karma Mimamsakas, the ritualists, they viewed that those sections of the Upanishads that were present to talk about the nature of the Atma, according to them, served no purpose. Because they believed that the primary purpose of the Veda was to reveal the rituals, to talk about rituals, not to talk about the self. Because knowing the self is not going to be of any benefit, according to them. Doing something is of benefit, knowing something is not really helpful, and therefore, according to them, they dismissed those sections of the Upanishads that do not reveal an activity but reveal a fact, the fact about a thing. They dismissed it as Arthavada or simply glorification. That is the reason why the Upanishad is talking about the Atma, which is not revealing any action, but it is merely saying this is the Atma, this is the nature of the Atma. They are saying it is a glorification of the Atma of the Yajamana, and the purpose of it was by saying, "Oh, Yajamana, you are so and so, etc., etc." His glorification, the purpose of it was so that the Yajamana would then perform the karma that was outlined in the Veda Purva Bhaga, or the ritualistic section of the Veda. So Acharya is saying, Upanishadam Arthavadatvam Vatatam Karma Mimamsakanam Mate. So according to the philosophy of the Purva Mimamsaka, who say that the Upanishads are primarily as eulogies, they are primarily to glorify the performance of karma, they are not to reveal the nature of the Atma. Etasam swarthe tatparyam nasti ityeva. According to that philosophy, all these Vedic sentences that we have talked about, which reveal the sadhana chatushtaya sampatti as necessary qualifications to know the Veda, according to the Purva Mimamsakas, there is no tatparya or import in their swartha, meaning that the purpose of those statements is not to talk about Viveka, Vairagya, etc. The import of those statements is not to reveal the nature of Viveka, Vairagya, etc. There is no benefit, according to the Purva Mimamsaka, from knowing Viveka, Vairagya. See, according to them, knowing the Atma itself is of no benefit. So, what benefit will they attribute to these fourfold qualifications? They will attribute no benefit. So, they say that all these Vedic sentences that talk about the qualifications for jnana also have no purpose. Therefore, the import of those sentences does not lie in the meaning that they convey. The import is in something else. So, swarthe tatparyam nasti. That's what they say. Now, if one were to be a follower of Purva Mimamsaka, one will also get into the same mistaken impression, will have the same mistaken impression. So he says, Jagadguru Swami says, Etasam swarte tatparyam nasti ityeva jnana sambhavat, because one may mistakenly entertain such a notion. What Adi Shankara Bhagavatpada is saying that no, please don't mistake it that way, because great sages have said, what have they said? Brahma jigyasitavyam, one must inquire into what Brahman is. And in order to inquire into Brahman, you need to possess some qualifications. Tatra cha etadrisha visheshana vishishtaha adhikarihi. So, if you want to, you must inquire into Brahman, because the knowledge of Brahman is the emancipatory knowledge. It is because of that knowledge of Brahman that one can escape from the cycle of samsara. The performance of karma, however dutifully done, in itself is insufficient to grant moksha, and jnana alone can give moksha. In order to get jnana, one must do Brahma Jigyasa, or an inquiry into Brahman, and in order to qualify to do an inquiry into Brahman, you need to possess the following characteristics. Tatra cha etadrisha visheshana vishishtaha adhikarihi. So, only an individual who possesses the sadhana chatushtaya sampatti qualifications, only such a person is qualified to commence an inquiry upon into Brahman. Such a knowledge is extremely difficult to attain. So, iti jnanasya durlabhatvat manishibhihi katithani ityuktam. So, the words manishibhihi katithani in the Vivekachudamani verse, Acharya is commenting, he's saying Adi Shankaracharya wants to say that such a knowledge is very rare, but it is a very valuable knowledge. In order to attain that knowledge, one needs to possess these qualifications. So kindly strive to attain these qualifications. Perform karma. Yes, karma is important. Why is karma important? Karma is important so that these qualifications can be attained. And the Vivekachudamani itself will say how those qualifications can be attained through karma. The purpose of this is to not fall under the trap that many Purva Mimamsakas fell under, which is they dismiss the entire Upanishadic section, they dismiss the necessity for jnana, and therefore they dismiss the sadhana chatushtaya sampatti also. So, in order to correct such a misconception, Acharya Shankara Bhagavatpada says, Manishibhihi katitani, great sages have stated this, so do not ignore this requirement. तथा च प्रमाणांतर अनधिगत कालत्रय अबाध्य परमपुरुषार्थ स्वरूप ब्रह्म प्रतिपादकत्वात् उपनिषदां तात्विक प्रामाण्यस्य अत्रैव संभवात् तत्तद्वाक्य समर्पित विवेकादि विशिष्टस्यैव सोन्वहिष्टव्यः स विजिज्ञासितव्यः इत्यादि वाक्य विहित जिज्ञासा योग्यता इति सर्वं चतुरस्रम्. So this is a long sentence, so we will split it into different words or phrases. Tathacha, therefore, pramanantara anadhigata. Now what is the jnana of Brahman? How can we attain that? Can we attain it through any other pramanas? No, only Shruti pramana can reveal this. The knowledge of Brahman cannot be attained through any other pramana because Brahman is not accessible by any pramana. Only the Shruti can reveal it, and that too, it can only reveal it by Lakshana or indirect implication. It cannot do it directly. So, such a Brahma Jnana is unattainable by any other Pramana. So, to indicate that, he uses the phrase Pramanantaranadikata. And then, what is the nature of Brahman? Kalatraya Abadhya. So, the nature of Paramartha Satyam. So what is Paramartha Satyam? Ultimate reality. And according to Advaita, there is only one object which is Paramartha Satyam, and that is Brahman. What is the nature of Paramartha Satyam if you ask? It is Kalatraya Abadhyam. That which is unnegatable in any period of time. Now, if you look at the objects of the world, they have a beginning, they exist for some time, and they are destroyed. So after their destruction, they no longer exist. So in the future, we will say this world will not exist. In the past, this world did not exist. Now it exists. So it is not Kalatraya Abadhyam. Badhyam means that which is negatable. Abadhyam means that which is unnegatable. Kalatraya Abadhyam means that which is unnegatable in any period of time. Now, Brahman existed in the past. Sadeva Somedam Agrasit. It exists right now, even here, right now it exists. And it will continue to exist for all time. So, in no period of time can you say that Brahman does not exist. It is the eternal one. It is the only eternal reality. And so, Acharya is indicating that by the word Kalatraya Abadhyam. And what is the nature of that Brahma Jnana? He says that is the Parama Purushartham. This Brahman is the ultimate Purushartha or the ultimate aim. So if we look at the Sanatana Dharma, we say Purushartha is of four types. Dharma or the Punyam that is gained through the performance of action. Artha, material wealth. It can also include spiritual wealth also. Kama or various desires that we have. And moksha or liberation. Now, this knowledge of Brahman confers moksha or the Parama Purushartha. So he says Brahman is the Parama Purushartha. And he said, Paramapurushartha Swarupa Brahma. Brahma or Brahman, whose nature is that of the Paramapurushartha or moksha. No, Brahman is not subject to samsara. Mistakenly harboring the notion that I am an individual jiva, Brahman, and such a Brahman is falsely attributing samsara to itself because of ignorance. So the jiva, who is none other than Brahman, mistakes himself to be a limited being because of ignorance and mistakes himself to be a Baddha Purusha, a person who is bound in samsara. But what is his nature? What is his Swarupam? The Brahma Swarupam, his intrinsic nature is that Brahman is eternally free. His nature is of liberation. So Paramapurushartha Mokshaha, Moksha Swarupa Brahma is what Jagadguru Mahaswami is saying. And what do the Upanishads do? They reveal the nature of Brahman. So he says, Paramapurushartha Swarupa Brahma Pratipadakatvat, because the Upanishads reveal the nature of Brahman, which is of eternal liberation. Knowing Brahman confers liberation. So one was previously harboring the mistaken notion of samsara, and through the knowledge of Brahman that is conferred by the Upanishads, and which cannot be gained by any other pramana, pramanantara anadhigata, kalatraya abadhya, paramapurushartha swarupa, brahma pratipadakatvat, because they reveal Brahman, Upanishadam tattvika pramanyasya. So Upanishads have tattvika pramanyam. So we should differentiate between tattvika pramanyam and atattvika pramanyam. So what is tattvika pramanyam? Now when we look at pramana or the means of knowledge, so for example, if I am looking at this pen and my eyes are seeing this pen, so sight or chakshurindriyam is a pramana. Through that chakshurindriyam, through the medium of sight, I am able to see this pen. Now, in the when I am looking at, say, the rope snake, I mistake the rope for the snake. Now, can I view my sight as a pramana at that point in time? We will say no. Why is that? Because when we look at that object carefully, we discover that we had mistaken it to be a snake, but in reality it is a rope. So that snake has been negated. It is badhyam. It has undergone negation, badha, and therefore my original knowledge was not a prama, it was not valid knowledge, it was a brahma, it was invalid knowledge. So he is saying that any means of knowledge that is later, which reveals a particular cognition, and if that cognition is later negated by a subsequent cognition, it follows that the first cognition was wrong. And the means of knowledge that revealed that cognition cannot be termed as a pramana in that case. Now, we say that apart from the knowledge of Brahman, there is no other knowledge which is unnegated. So, to explain, today we are seeing the world, we confer upon it the reality. We say, I see it, therefore it exists. Now, what the Upanishad is saying, what Advaitam is saying, is that yes, today you are considering the world to be real because you see it. But later, when you study the Shastra, when you study the Veda, and the Veda says, Neha nanasti kinchana, there is no multiplicity here. It is not saying there is no multiplicity somewhere else in heaven. No. Neha nanasti kinchana. There is no multiplicity whatsoever. And then it's a, what else? Let's give another example. It says, Sadeva Somya Idamagrasit Ekameva Dvitiyam. All this, oh dear one, was Sat alone. All this meaning what? This entire universe was Sat alone. And it was Sat and nothing but the Sat. There is no duality whatsoever. So, what the Upanishad is revealing there is that the universe that we have assumed to be real at the moment in time, it negates that assumption. It says, no, you have mistaken. What you consider to be real is not real. So, can a pratyaksham or perception that reveals the reality of the universe, which is later negated by the Veda, can such a perception be called a tattvika pramanam or an eternally valid pramanam? No. We say it cannot be called a tattvika pramanam. So, what is a tattvika pramanam? A tattvika pramanam is that which reveals an object which is unnegated. That is why Acharya has used the word kalatraya abadhyam in the sentence. So, Brahman, which is unnegatable in any period of time, is the Paramapurushartha, is the highest aim or goal of life. And the Upanishads that reveal such a Brahman are the only pramana that can be called as tattvika pramana. So he says, Upanishadam tattvika pramanyasya atraiva sambhavat. The possibility of tattvika pramana or absolute validity of the means of knowledge is only applicable for those Upanishadic sentences that reveal Brahman. So he says by the word atraiva, here alone that tattvika pramana is possible. By saying that, what he is saying is, yes, all other pramanas that we consider in our vyavahara, in our daily transactions, they have some empirical validity. They are valid to a certain extent. You can transact based on that. They have some utility. But let us not confuse transactability, utility, empirical validity for ultimate validity. They are two different things. An ultimately valid pramana reveals something which is absolutely unnegatable. None of the other pramanas have that quality. Only those Upanishadic sentences that reveal Brahman have the tattvika pramana. To emphasize that, Acharya uses the evakara and says atraiva sambhavat. It is possible only here, nowhere else. Therefore, as a result of this, tattadvakya samarpita vivekadi vishishtasyaiva. Now, in the last session, we had looked at various Upanishadic pramanas, pramana vakyas, those sentences that had been quoted by Jagadguru Srimad Chandrasekhara Mahaswamigal that spoke about the fourfold qualifications. And he says, Tattadvakya Samarpita means each of those sentences revealed a particular sadhana chatushtaya sampatti, such as Viveka, etc. And only such a person who was endowed with these sampattis or qualifications, Vivekadi Vishishtasyaiva, only such a person, what is he capable of doing? What is he qualified for doing? Sonveshtavyaha sa vijigyasatavyaha ityadi vakyavihita jigyasa yogyateti sarvam chaturasram. Only a person who is qualified with these fourfold qualifications of Vivekadi, only such a person can follow the instruction in the Veda, so anveshtavyaha. One must inquire into that. What is that? Brahman. So vijigyasatavyaha. One must know that Brahman. Why should one know that Brahman? Because by knowing Brahman, one is freed from the bondages of samsara. And only such a person, ityadi vakya vihita jigyasa yogyata. So the one, these sentences such as sa anveshtavyaha, sa vijigyasatavyaha, etc., are instructing one to conduct an inquiry into Brahman, and the qualifications for that inquiry, the jigyasa yogyata, is only possible for an individual who is endowed with these fourfold qualifications. It is sarvam chaturasram, or these fourfold qualifications are the basis for which one, based on which one can commence an inquiry into Brahman. That brings the commentary to the 18th verse to a conclusion. We will conclude this talk at this point in time, and we will take up the 19th verse and its commentary in the next session. Om Purnamadav Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti.